The summit was held on neutral ground. Not a council station, not a human world. A small moon in unclaimed space, bare and cold, where a temporary facility had been built for this single purpose. Ambassador Jiwoo arrived with a small delegation. Admiral Taesung Choi stood beside her, along with Captain Dong Hyun Yoon, Engineer Subin Kang, and Dr. Hee Jin Lee. They represented the different aspects of humanity: diplomacy, defense, commerce, innovation, culture. The council sent twice as many delegates. High Chancellor Thessa led them. She looked nervous. This was the most important moment of her leadership. The two groups met in a simple room. No grand decorations, no ceremonial displays, just tables and chairs in the weight of history. Thessa stood first. She had rehearsed her words 100 times, but now that the moment was here, she set aside her prepared speech. She spoke from the heart instead. Ambassador Park, Admiral Choi, Captain Yoon, Engineer Kang, Dr. Lee, and through you, all of humanity, the Galactic Council has wronged you. We took you for granted. We disrespected you. We treated you as servants rather than equals. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. We were fools. We did not see what we had until it was gone. We did not appreciate your contributions until we tried to survive without them. We did not understand your value until your absence showed us the truth. She looked directly at Jiwoo. I speak for the entire Galactic Council when I say this. We are sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. We ask for your forgiveness. And we ask for the chance to earn back your trust. The room was silent. Jiwoo studied Thessa's face. The Chancellor's remorse was genuine. But was it enough? Jiwoo stood slowly. Your apology is accepted, Chancellor, but words alone cannot heal what was broken. She placed a document on the table. These are our conditions for returning to the Council. First, all member species must be guaranteed equal standing in governance. No species shall be considered superior or inferior. Second, cultural heritage protections must be enshrined in Council law. Third, a new conflict resolution system must be established with human mediation principles incorporated. Fourth, economic reforms to prevent exploitation of smaller species. She paused. And fifth, a formal treaty stating that if any species is ever disrespected in such a manner again, they have the right to leave without penalty or interference. Thessa picked up the document and read through it carefully. Some of the council delegates shifted uncomfortably. These conditions would change everything. They would give up power. They would admit they had been wrong, but they had no choice. And deep down, many of them knew these changes were right. Thessa looked up. We accept all of it. Some delegates gasped. Others nodded in agreement. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. Some species resisted giving up their advantages, but they were outvoted by those who understood that the galaxy needed fundamental change. In the end, every condition was agreed to. The treaty was drafted, reviewed, and signed. They called it the Treaty of New Foundations, but signing a treaty was just the beginning. Trust would take time to rebuild. Captain Dong Hyun Yoon reopened his trade consortium slowly and carefully. He started with small deals, testing whether the council species would honor their commitments. Merchant Overlord Pixith was his first partner. The old merchant had changed. He treated Dong Hyun with genuine respect now, having learned that relationships matter more than profits. Their first joint venture was modest, just a small shipping route. But it succeeded. Then they tried another, and another. Slowly, the trade networks began to rebuild. Admiral Taesung Choi met with Commander Zorak to discuss resuming joint military operations. The two old friends embraced like brothers. I missed fighting at your side, Zorak said. And I missed having someone watch my back, Taesung replied. They established new protocols. Human forces would never again be treated as subordinates. They would be equal partners in every operation. The first joint patrol went smoothly. Pirates who had grown bold during humanity's absence quickly learned that the old order had returned, better than before. Engineer Subin Kang returned to her unfinished projects. The half-terraformed world she had left behind was in poor condition. The alien engineers who had tried to continue her work had done their best, but they lacked the expertise. Subin did not criticize them. Instead, she praised their efforts and taught them what they needed to know. Together, they completed the work. The planet bloomed with life. And this time, the alien engineers truly understood what they were doing. Dr. Hyojin Lee established a new cultural exchange program. This time, there were strict rules. Every culture would be respected. Every tradition would be honored. No species would be mocked or dismissed. Thousands of beings applied to participate. They came from every corner of the galaxy, eager to learn about each other. The program became one of the most successful initiatives in Council history. Scholar Myron was invited to Earth as an honored guest. He walked through human cities, visited human museums, attended human concerts. He gave lectures on galactic history and helped establish archives to ensure the lessons of this crisis would never be forgotten. On his last day, he met with Ambassador Jiwoo in a quiet garden. "Thank you for your book," Jiwoo said. "It helped people understand what we meant to the galaxy." Myron shook his head. "I only documented the truth. You and your people created the reality. I simply made sure it was not forgotten." 3 years passed. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still problems, still conflicts, still misunderstandings. But something fundamental had changed. Species treated each other with more respect. Smaller civilizations had a real voice in council decisions. Cultural diversity was celebrated rather than tolerated. Economic exploitation had decreased dramatically. The crisis had been painful, but it had also been necessary. Ambassador Jiwoo was invited to address a new generation of council members. Many of them had been children when humanity left. They had grown up in a galaxy that valued dignity and equality. They wanted to hear from the person who had made it possible. Jiwoo stood before the assembly, older now, her hair touched with gray. But her eyes were still sharp, still kind. She spoke about the crisis, about the insult, about the decision to leave, about the pain of walking away from something they loved. But mostly, she spoke about what came after. "It is easy to make mistakes," she said. "All species do. All individuals do. The true measure of character is not whether you make mistakes, but whether you acknowledge them and learn from them." She looked around the chamber at the young faces watching her. The council made a mistake. But then it did something brave. It admitted that mistake. It changed. It grew. That is what matters. She paused, choosing her final words carefully. "Remember this lesson. Dignity is not given. It is recognized. Respect is not demanded. It is earned. And silence, when wielded with purpose, can speak louder than any war." The assembly rose in applause. It lasted for 5 minutes. When it finally ended, Jiwoo left the stage and walked out into the corridors of the council station. She passed by the coffee shop on level 12. It was open again, run by a human-alien partnership. She passed by the repair crew working on the air filters, humans and aliens working side by side. She passed by a classroom where Dr. Hyojin Lee was teaching students from a dozen different worlds. Everything was as it should be. That evening, Jiwoo stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Admiral Tae-sung Choi joined her. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. "Do you think they have truly learned?" Tae-sung asked. Jiwoo smiled. "I think so, but we must remain vigilant. Change is never permanent unless we protect it. Will you stay on as ambassador? For a while longer? Until I am sure the foundations are solid. Then it will be time for someone younger to take over." They watched the ships coming and going. Human ships and alien ships flying together in harmony. It had been a long journey, a painful journey. But they had arrived somewhere better than where they started. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Not through war, not through destruction, but through absence humanity had left without a word. And in that silence they had spoken volumes. Now they were back. Not as subordinates, not as servants, but as equals, as they always should have been. The plague killed 100,000 beings before it was finally contained. The council buried their dead and counted the cost. Then they made their first attempt to reach humanity. A delegation of 7 counselors flew to the edge of human space. They sent messages ahead requesting permission to land. The messages were acknowledged but not answered. When they arrived at the border, human patrol ships met them. The lead ship's captain appeared on screen. She was polite but firm. "I am sorry, but we cannot grant you passage into human territory at this time. But we must speak with your leaders." One of the counselors protested. "This is urgent, I understand, but our answer remains the same. Humanity is not currently accepting council delegations, please, another counselor begged. People are dying. We need your help. The captain's expression softened slightly. I am truly sorry for your losses. But you chose to make us leave. Now you must respect our boundaries. The screen went dark. The delegation returned to council space empty-handed. Counselor Thessa watched the report with a heavy heart. She had expected this, but she had to try a different approach. She requested a private ship. No official markings, no other delegates. Just her, alone. She flew to human space and sent a personal message to Ambassador Jiwoo. They had worked together for years. Surely that meant something. To her surprise, she received a response. Permission to land on a small colony world. Coordinates attached. Thessa landed her ship in a quiet spaceport. The world was beautiful, covered in green forests and blue lakes. Humans had been building here for only a few years, but it already felt like home. Ambassador Jiwoo met her at a small cafe overlooking a lake. She looked tired but composed. The two old colleagues sat across from each other, and for a moment neither spoke. Finally, Thessa broke the silence. I tried to stop it. You know that, do you not? Jiwoo nodded. I know. You were one of the few who spoke up. I have not forgotten, then please come back. The galaxy needs you. We are falling apart without you. Jiwoo sipped her tea slowly. Thessa, you are a good person. You tried to do the right thing. But one person's apology is not enough. What would be enough? An acknowledgement. A real one. Not from you alone, but from the entire council. An admission that what happened was wrong, and proof that things will change. Thessa leaned forward desperately. I can try to make that happen. I can push for a formal apology, can you? Jiwoo asked gently. Can you convince Vrexith to admit he was wrong? Can you convince the Krell Empire to treat humans as equals? Thessa sat back, defeated. She knew the answer. No, not yet. Then we cannot return, Jiwoo said. Not yet, maybe not ever. That is up to the council. Thessa left the planet in tears, but she was more determined than ever. She would find a way. Back in council space, other attempts were made. Merchant Overlord Pixith tried to bribe humans to return. He offered enormous sums of money, exclusive trade deals, anything they wanted. Captain Dong Hyun Yoon responded publicly. His message was broadcast across the entire galaxy. We appreciate the offer, but humanity cannot be bought. Our dignity is not for sale. We will return only when we are treated with respect, not when we are paid enough to ignore disrespect. The message humiliated Pixith. But it also made him think. He had spent his whole life believing that everything had a price. Maybe he had been wrong. Meanwhile, scholar Myron finished his book. The Weight of Silence was published and became an instant sensation. Beings across the galaxy read it and wept. They had not realized how much humans had done, how much they had contributed, how much they had sacrificed. The book sparked a movement. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Citizens demanded their governments apologize to humanity. They held vigils. They played human music. They studied human philosophy. Commander Zorak organized a petition among military leaders. Hundreds of officers signed it, including many from the Krell Empire itself. The petition demanded that the council formally apologize and reform its governance to ensure all species were treated equally. High Chancellor Vrexith refused. He stood before the council and declared that he would never apologize for speaking the truth. But his support was crumbling. Even members of his own species were turning against him. Then came the military disaster. A faction of hardline counselors decided to use force. They believed that if they occupied a human colony, they could force negotiations. They assembled a fleet and launched an invasion. They chose a small colony world on the edge of human space. Surely it would be lightly defended. Surely humans would not risk war over one small world. They were wrong on both counts. Admiral Tae-sung Choi had been warned by Commander Zorak. He knew the attack was coming. He was ready. The council fleet arrived to find the colony protected by a defensive grid so sophisticated that they could not even approach. Their weapons would not lock on. Their communications were jammed. Their navigation systems went haywire. Then human ships appeared. They did not fire. They did not need to. They simply disabled every council ship without destroying them. The council forces floated helplessly in space, their weapons and engines offline. They waited for the killing blow. It never came. Instead, human ships towed them to safety. Medical teams boarded the disabled vessels and treated the wounded. Engineers repaired their life support systems. Then Admiral Tae-sung sent a message to the Council. We do not seek war. We seek respect. Your people are safe and will be returned to you unharmed. But understand this. If you try again, we will defend ourselves. We left in peace. Allow us to remain in peace. The Council fleet returned home in shame. Not a single life lost, not a single ship destroyed, and yet they had been utterly defeated. The news spread like fire. Humans had shown mercy when they could have shown vengeance. They had proven their strength without needing to kill. Public opinion turned decisively against the Council leadership. Protests intensified. Even Vrexith's closest allies began to distance themselves. Councillor Thessa called for a vote of no confidence. She stood before the full council and laid out the case against Vrexith. His pride had cost them their best allies. His arrogance had led to economic collapse. His refusal to apologize had resulted in a humiliating military defeat. It is time for new leadership, she declared. It is time for humility. It is time to make things right. The vote was overwhelming. Vrexith was removed from office. He left the chambers in disgrace, his golden scales now seeming tarnished. Councillor Thessa was elected the new High Chancellor. Her first act was to draft a formal apology to humanity. Her second act was to invite them to a summit. This time, she promised, things would be different. The first crisis came 3 weeks after the humans left. A trade convoy was attacked by pirates in the Outer Rim. This happened sometimes. Usually, human patrol ships would respond within hours. They had the fastest ships and the best tracking systems. Pirates feared them, but the human patrol ships were gone. The Council sent Talon warships instead. They arrived 3 days later. By then, the convoy was destroyed and the pirates were long gone. 17 merchant ships lost. Hundreds of crew members dead. Millions in cargo stolen. Merchant Overlord Pixith stood in the council chambers and demanded answers. Where was our protection? He roared. His bulbous body shook with rage. My ships are destroyed. My people are dead. What are you doing about it? High Chancellor Vrexith waved a dismissive hand. We are doing our best with available resources. These things happen. These things did not happen when humans patrolled those routes, Pixith shot back. Vrexith's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps you should have appreciated them more while they were here. The chamber fell silent. It was the first time anyone in power had admitted that the human departure was a problem. But it was only the first problem. 2 months after the humans left, a border dispute erupted between the Krell Empire and the Lyrian Confederacy. It was an old argument about a mining asteroid. For years, human mediators had kept both sides talking. Now those mediators were gone. The Krell sent warships. The Lyrians sent warships. Small skirmishes broke out. People died. Councillor Thessa tried to negotiate peace. She begged both sides to talk. But she was not trained in human-style diplomacy. She did not know their techniques for finding common ground. The talks collapsed. The fighting continued. 3 months after the humans left, Orbital Station Harmony suffered a catastrophic systems failure. The life support systems crashed. The backup systems failed. 30,000 people lived on that station. Engineers from 5 different species tried to fix it. They worked for 18 hours straight. But they could not figure out the problem. The systems were too complex, built with human technology that no one else fully understood. 43 people died before they managed to get the life support working again. And even then, it was only working at 60% capacity. The station was evacuated. 30,000 refugees spread across the galaxy looking for new homes. 4 months after the humans left, the Council's currency began to collapse. Human banks had provided stability to the galactic economy. They loaned money during hard times. They managed exchange rates. They created financial instruments that helped small businesses grow. Now those banks were closed. The money they had loaned was being called back. The exchange rates went wild. Businesses failed. Savings disappeared. Ordinary people watched their life's work vanish overnight. Merchant Overlord Pixith lost half his wealth in a single week. Other merchants fared even worse. Some lost everything. 5 months after the humans left, the cultural decline became obvious. Music festivals were canceled because human performers were gone. Art galleries closed because human artists were not there to create new works. Universities struggled because human professors had left and no one could teach their classes. The galaxy felt duller, grayer, less interesting. Scholar Myron spent his days in the archives, reading everything humans had ever written. He read their poetry, their philosophy, their history. He had studied humans for years, but only now did he realize how much they had contributed to galactic culture. He began writing a book. He called it The Weight of Silence. In it, he documented every way that humanity had shaped the galaxy. Every innovation, every peace treaty, every bridge between species, every act of kindness. It was a long book. 6 months after the humans left, Counselor Thessa presented her report to the full council. She had spent months gathering data. The results were devastating. Trade was down 40%. Military conflicts were up 300%. Infrastructure failures were happening weekly. The economy was in freefall. Cultural institutions were dying, and it was all connected to one thing: the absence of humanity. High Chancellor Vrexith listened to her presentation with a stony face. When she finished, he stood. "You exaggerate, Counselor. These are temporary problems. We will adapt." Thessa looked at him with something close to pity. "How long will you lie to yourself, Chancellor? How many more must die before you admit the truth?" Vrexith's scales flushed dark with anger. "I will not be spoken to in such a manner." "Then you will not hear the truth," Thessa replied. She gathered her papers and left the chamber. But others had heard. Younger counselors, military commanders, ordinary citizens watching the broadcast. The truth was spreading, no matter how much Vrexith denied it. Commander Zorak contacted Admiral Tai-Sung Choi through a secret channel. It was risky. The council was monitoring all communications with human space. But Zorak had to try. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than Zorak remembered. "My friend," Zorak began, "I must warn you. There are factions in the council discussing military action. They want to force humanity to return." Tai-Sung nodded slowly. "Thank you for the warning, but they will find that more difficult than they imagine." "Please," Zorak said. "Is there any way to resolve this? The galaxy is falling apart without you. Then perhaps the galaxy should have thought about that before insulting us." "Not all of us insulted you," Zorak protested. "Some of us tried to stop it. Some of us valued your friendship." Tai-Sung's expression softened slightly. "I know, old friend. And I am sorry, but this is not about individuals. This is about principles. Until the council as a whole acknowledges what they did and shows they have changed, we cannot return." The screen went dark. Zorak sat alone with his thoughts. He understood the humans' position. In their place, he would do the same. But understanding did not make it hurt less. 7 months after the humans left, the plague came. It started on a crowded colony world in the Inner Rim. A virus, highly contagious, spreading through the ventilation systems. People fell sick by the thousands. Human medical teams had handled outbreaks like this before. They had the training, the equipment, the protocols. They could contain a plague before it became a catastrophe, but the human medical teams were gone. The council sent what doctors they had. They tried their best, but they were overwhelmed. The virus spread to other worlds. The death toll climbed. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, and still it spread. In the council chambers, panic set in. They needed help. They needed expertise. They needed humans, but when they tried to contact humanity, they found only silence. The humans had meant what they said. They were gone. Without a word, humans left Part 2. The evacuation began at dawn. On Trading Station Alpha 7, Captain Dong Hyun-yoon walked through his office one last time. The walls were covered with pictures. Him shaking hands with a Krell merchant. Him laughing with a Lyrian trademaster. Him celebrating the opening of a new shipping route with delegates from 6 different worlds. He took the pictures down carefully, one by one, and packed them in a box. His assistant, a young Talon named Crix, stood in the doorway. Her feathers were flat against her body, a sign of distress. "You are really leaving?" she asked. Dong-hyun nodded. "Yes. I am sorry, Crix. You have been a good friend." "But why? What happened?" He looked at her kind eyes. He wanted to explain. He wanted to tell her about the insult, about the disrespect, about the moment when he realized that all his friendships meant nothing if his people were not valued. But what good would words do now? "Sometimes," he said quietly, You have to walk away from something you love to protect something you love more. Crix did not understand, but she helped him carry the boxes to his ship anyway. Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated in 1,000 different ways. Human doctors left the hospitals they had built. Human teachers left the schools where they taught alien children. Human engineers shut down the systems they had designed and left detailed instructions for others to maintain them. Human artists packed their paintings. Human musicians gave away their instruments. They left everything organized. They left nothing broken. They simply left. Engineer Subin Kang stood on the half-finished planet one last time. The alien team she had trained gathered around her. They looked confused and hurt. "Why must you go?" one of them asked. "We need you. The project is not finished." Subin handed them a data pad. "I have written everything down. Every step, every calculation, every technique. You can finish this without me. It will take longer, but you can do it. I believe in you. But we do not want to do it without you," the engineer said. "You taught us everything." Subin felt tears in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Then I taught you well. You will be fine." She boarded her ship and did not look back. If she looked back, she might not leave. And she had to leave. Admiral Tae-sung Choi commanded the withdrawal of the human defense fleet with military precision. Every ship pulled out of joint operations on schedule. Every base was evacuated cleanly. Every piece of equipment was either taken or destroyed so it could not be misused. Commander Zorak of the Talon Dominion watched the human ships leave formation. He had fought beside these humans for 10 years. He trusted them more than he trusted his own cousins. He opened a private channel to Tai-sung's flagship. "Admiral, please. Tell me what happened. Why are you leaving?" Tae-sung's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired. "We were not respected, Zorak. And without respect, what is the point of staying?" "I respect you," Zorak said desperately. "Many of us do, I know. And I will miss fighting at your side. But this is not about individuals. This is about principles." The screen went dark. Zorak stood alone on his bridge, watching the human fleet disappear into the distance. He felt something break inside his chest. They had just lost their best allies, and he knew it was the Council's fault. Dr. Hyejin Lee spent her last week in Council space recording interviews. She talked to every human she could find. She asked them what they were leaving behind, what they would miss, what they hoped for the future. Their answers broke her heart. A teacher said she would miss her students. A doctor said he would miss saving lives. A farmer said she would miss the alien crops she had learned to grow. An artist said he would miss the inspiration that came from seeing so many different cultures. But they all said the same thing at the end. They would not stay where they were not valued. Hai Jin compiled the interviews into a documentary. She called it The Weight of Silence. She did not know if anyone would ever see it. But she needed to create something beautiful from this pain. In the council chambers, life continued as normal. For the first week, no one noticed. Humans were everywhere, but they were also easy to overlook. They did not draw attention to themselves. By the second week, people started noticing small things. The coffee shop on level 12 was closed. The repair crew that usually fixed the air filters was gone. The language translator everyone used was suddenly running slower because the human programmers who maintained it were not there. Still, most delegates shrugged it off. So what if some humans left? There were other species, other workers, other solutions. High Chancellor Vrexith barely noticed. He was busy with other matters. When someone mentioned the human withdrawal, he waved a dismissive hand. They will be back. They need the council too much to stay away for long. But Councillor Thessa was worried. She tried to reach Ambassador Jiwoo again and again. Every message went unanswered. Every call was rejected. It was like humans had simply vanished. She called an emergency meeting with other concerned councillors. Only a handful showed up. "We need to address this," she said. "The humans are leaving. All of them. This is not a small matter." A Krell councillor laughed. "Let them go." "We do not need them, but what if we do?" Thessa asked. "What if we have taken them for granted?" No one listened. The meeting ended early. Thessa returned to her office and began documenting everything. She kept detailed records of the human departure. Someday, someone would need to understand what happened here. On the 30th day, the last human ship left Council space. Ambassador Jiwoo stood on the bridge, watching the Council station shrink in the view screen. She felt hollow inside. 20 years of work, 20 years of friendship and diplomacy, gone, but she did not regret it. She opened a communication channel. It was set to broadcast on all major council frequencies. This would be the last time humans spoke to the galaxy for a long time. To the members of the Galactic Council, she began. Her voice was calm and clear. Humanity is grateful for the 50 years we spent as part of your community. We learned much. We gave much. We hope that what we built together will last. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. We leave not in anger, but in sadness. We leave because we cannot stay where we are not respected as equals. We thank those who treated us with kindness. We forgive those who did not. And we hope that one day the galaxy will be a place where all voices are valued. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They stood straight, proud, heartbroken. Until that day comes, humanity will walk its own path. We wish you well, she closed the channel. And then, as one final gesture, humans shut down all their communication networks. Every frequency went silent. Every relay stopped working. Every translation program went offline. The galaxy suddenly felt much quieter. In the council chambers, Counselor Thessa listened to Jiwoo's message with tears running down her face. She had tried to stop this. She had tried to make them listen. But no one wanted to hear. Now it was too late. Now they would all learn what it meant to lose something precious. The station hung in space like a crystal palace. It was massive, built by 100 different species over 100 years. The Galactic Council chambers glowed with soft lights from every color imaginable. Today was supposed to be a celebration. Ambassador Jiwoo Park walked through the Great Hall. Her dark suit was simple compared to the colorful robes and armor of the other ambassadors. She had been coming to this place for 20 years. She knew every corridor, every face. This was her second home. Around her, delegates from dozens of worlds gathered. The Krell were tall and proud, their golden skin catching the light. The Lyrians moved like water, their tentacles flowing gracefully. The Talons stood in their battle armor even during peace. So many species, so many cultures, all united under one council. Or so everyone believed. Jiwoo took her seat among the human delegation. There were 5 of them today. Captain Dong Hyun-yoon sat beside her, dressed in his merchant uniform. He smiled and waved at his alien friends across the chamber. He had built business partnerships with half the galaxy. Everyone liked Dong Hyun. The ceremony began with music. Strange instruments from a dozen worlds played together in harmony. It was beautiful. Jiwoo closed her eyes and listened. This was why she loved the council. This was what they had built together. High Chancellor Vrexith rose to speak. He was ancient, even by Krell standards. His scales were pale gold, almost white. When he spoke, his voice filled the chamber like thunder. He talked about unity. He talked about progress. Jiwoo had heard this speech before. She smiled politely and waited for it to end. Then Vrexith changed direction. He began talking about humanity's recent proposal. The humans had asked for new laws to protect cultural heritage sites. They wanted to make sure that no species could destroy another's history, even in war. It seemed reasonable to Jiwoo. Important even. Vrexith laughed. The sound echoed off the walls. He called the proposal sentimental nonsense. He said humans were too young to understand real galactic politics. He said they cared too much about feelings and not enough about strength. Jiwoo felt her jaw tighten. Beside her, Dong Hyun stopped smiling, but Vrexith was not finished. He turned to face the human delegation directly. His eyes were cold and bright. Humans, he said, should be grateful for their place in the council. They were useful workers, good builders, decent soldiers, but they were not equals. They never had been. They were children playing at the adult table, and they should stop pretending otherwise. The chamber went silent. Jiwoo sat very still. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers interlaced. She did not move. She did not speak. She barely breathed. Some delegates laughed. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Counselor Thessa, a Lyrian with kind eyes, started to object. Vrexith waved her into silence. The moments stretched. Jiwoo could feel every human in the room waiting. What would she do? Would she yell? Would she walk out? Would she demand an apology? She did none of those things. Instead, Jiwoo stood slowly. Her movements were calm and deliberate. She straightened her jacket. She looked at Vrexith for a long moment. Then she looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates she had worked with for 2 decades. When she spoke, Her voice was quiet but clear. Humanity has served the Galactic Council faithfully for 50 years. We have given our labor, our knowledge, our friendship, and our blood. We have asked only for respect in return. If that respect cannot be given, then we must reconsider whether this is the right place for us. Brexit laughed again. 'Twas not a kind sound. Reconsider all you wish, Ambassador. You need us far more than we need you. Where will you go? Who will trade with you? Who will protect you? You are nothing without the Council. Jiwoo said nothing. She simply bowed, a traditional human gesture of farewell. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. The other human delegates followed her without a word. The chamber buzzed with whispers. Some delegates looked shocked. Others looked amused. Most looked confused. What had just happened? Surely the humans would not actually leave. It was just pride talking. They would calm down in a few days. Counselor Thessa tried to follow Jiwoo into the corridor, but the ambassador was already gone. Thessa stood in the doorway, a feeling of dread settling in her chest. She had studied human history. She knew what happened when you pushed them too far. Back in her office, Jiwoo sat at her desk. Her hand shook slightly, but her face was calm. She opened her communication terminal and began typing a message. It was short. Just 3 words in Korean, followed by their translation. The message went out on every secure human channel. It reached Earth. It reached the colonies. It reached every human ship, station, and outpost in Council space. Dolagaja, Jibro, let us return home. Within an hour, responses began flooding back. Not questions. Not protests. Just confirmations. Understood. Preparing for departure. We stand with you. Admiral Tae-sung Choi received the message aboard his flagship. He was in the middle of a joint military exercise with Talon forces. He looked at the screen for a long moment, then turned to his second officer. Send word to all human vessels. Begin withdrawal protocols. We leave Council space within 30 days. Engineer Subin Kang was on a half-terraformed world when the message arrived. She was 3 years into a 5-year project to make the planet livable. She looked at her work, at the alien engineers she had trained, at the city rising in the distance. Then she called her team together and told them to pack. Dr. Hyejin Lee was teaching a class on Earth literature to a mixed group of species. Her students loved her. She loved teaching them. When the message came, tears filled her eyes. But she did not hesitate. She dismissed the class early and began preparing to leave. All across the galaxy, humans received the same message, and all across the galaxy they began to move. There was no announcement to the Council, no press conference, no official statement. Humans simply began closing their shops, packing their belongings, and saying quiet goodbyes. In the Council chambers, Vrexith was already moving on to other business. He had forgotten about the humans by the time the session ended. They were not important enough to worry about, but Counselor Thessa had not forgotten. She returned to her quarters and began making calls. She tried to reach Jiwoo, but the ambassador's line was already disconnected. She tried contacting other human officials. All lines were busy or offline. Thessa stood at her window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was making a choice, and she had a terrible feeling that the Council had just made the biggest mistake in its history. The silence had begun.